The first shot rang out as Tabitha Ross clutched her twins to her chest and pressed her back against the crude wooden wall of her small homestead. The year was 1875, and the Dakota Territory had not been kind to the young widow since her husband James had passed 6 months prior. "Mama, I'm scared," whispered 5-year-old Emma, her small fingers digging into Tabitha's worn cotton dress. Beside her, Emma's twin brother Ethan remained silent, his eyes wide with fear. "Hush now," Tabitha soothed, though her own heart hammered wildly in her chest. "It's just some cowboys having fun, that's all." But she knew better. The bank had sent men to force them off the land after she'd missed the last payment. When the pounding on the door came, Tabitha stood tall despite her trembling limbs. At 26, she had already endured more hardship than most women twice her age. She smoothed her auburn hair, tucked loose strands behind her ears, and opened the door. "Mrs. Ross," the bank representative said curtly, tipping his hat with false politeness. "I'm afraid your time is up. You have until sundown tomorrow to vacate the premises." "Please," Tabitha's voice cracked. "My children, not my concern, madam." His eyes were cold. "Perhaps you should have thought of that before your husband borrowed money he couldn't repay." After he left, Tabitha sank to the floor, allowing herself one moment of weakness before her twins crawled into her lap, their innocent faces looking to her for answers she didn't have. "Where will we go, Mama?" Ethan asked, his small hand patting her tear-stained cheek. Tabitha straightened her shoulders. "To town, my loves. I'll find work and we'll start anew." The town of Willow Creek was dusty and bustling when Tabitha arrived the next day, her few possessions and twins in tow. She'd sold their wagon and horse just to afford a room at the boarding house for a week. That gave her 7 days to find employment or face the harsh reality of true destitution. "No, madam. Can't hire a woman with little ones underfoot," said the shopkeeper, not unkindly but firmly. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Ross. The children would disrupt the customers," explained the restaurant owner, a widow. "With twins?" "No, that won't do for our establishment," the hotel manager dismissed her without a second glance. By the 5th day, Tabitha had been turned away from every business in Willow Creek. She sat on a bench outside the general store, watching Emma and Ethan play with a stick in the dirt, blissfully unaware of their dire situation. "You look like you could use some coffee." Tabitha looked up to find a tall man holding 2 steaming cups. His face was weathered from the sun, but his blue eyes were kind beneath the brim of his worn cowboy hat. Dust covered his clothes, suggesting he'd just ridden into town. "I couldn't possibly accept," she began. "It's just coffee, madam, and you look like you haven't had a warm drink in days." He offered it again, and this time she took it. "Thank you, Mr. Owen Parrish." He settled beside her on the bench, leaving a respectful distance between them. "Those your little ones?" Tabitha nodded, watching as Emma now chased Ethan around in circles. "Emma and Ethan, they're 5 twins," Owen observed with a smile. "They've got your spirit." Tabitha couldn't help but laugh. "And my stubbornness, I'm afraid." Owen sipped his coffee, watching the children play. "I couldn't help overhearing at the mercantile. You're looking for work?" Tabitha's shoulders slumped. "Yes, but it seems no one wants to hire a widow with twins." She hadn't meant to sound so bitter, but the week's rejections had worn her down. Owen was quiet for a long moment. "I've got a ranch about 5 miles west of town. Nothing fancy, but it's good land. I could use help around the place." Tabitha tensed. "Mr. Parrish, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not the kind of woman who—" Owen raised a hand, his expression sincere. "No, madam, you misunderstand. I've got a cabin on my property. Used to belong to my foreman before he moved on last month. You and your children could stay there and you could cook and help with the household chores. I'm not much for cooking myself, and the place could use a woman's touch." Tabitha studied him skeptically. Men didn't offer something for nothing, especially to a woman alone. As if reading her thoughts, Owen added, "I've got my sister coming to stay in a few weeks. Been trying to convince her to move out from Boston since our parents passed. So you see, it would be proper." "Why would you help us?" You don't even know us." Owen's gaze drifted to the twins. "My ma raised my sister and me alone after Pa died in the war. Times were hard. Someone helped us once when we needed it most." He looked back at Tabitha. "Sometimes a person just needs a chance." Tabitha wanted to refuse out of pride, but the thought of her children sleeping on the street overrode her reservations. "We can try it for a while," she said finally, "but I'll earn our keep, Mr. Parrish. I'm not looking for charity." "Never thought you were, Mrs. Ross." Owen stood, tipping his hat. "I've got supplies to gather. Meet me at the livery stable in 2 hours." After Owen left, Tabitha called her children over. "We've been offered a place to stay," she explained, brushing dust from Ethan's cheek. "At her ranch outside of town. Will there be horses?" Ethan asked excitedly. "And chickens," Emma added, bouncing on her toes. Tabitha smiled, their enthusiasm lifting her spirits. "I expect so, but we must be on our best behavior. Mr. Parrish is being very kind to offer us his home." 2 hours later, Owen helped them into his wagon. The ride to the ranch was quiet, with the twins eventually falling asleep against Tabitha. As they crested a hill, Owen slowed the horses. "There it is," he said softly. "Parrish Ranch." Tabitha gasped. The property sprawled across the valley, a large main house surrounded by several outbuildings, corrals, and pastures where cattle grazed. In the distance, mountains rose majestic against the late afternoon sky. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Been in my family for 20 years, Owen said proudly. "My pa bought it when this was still wild country, built it up from nothing." As they approached, Tabitha noticed a small cabin set about 100 yards from the main house. It was simple but well-maintained, with a small porch and chimney. "That'll be your place," Owen nodded toward it. "It's not fancy, but it's solid. No leaks, even in the worst storms." He helped her and the now awake twins down from the wagon and carried their meager belongings to the cabin. Inside, it was clean and furnished with basic necessities: a table with chairs, a small cooking stove, a bed, and what looked like a recently added trundle bed for the twins. "You've prepared for us," Tabitha said, surprised. Owen shrugged, suddenly looking uncomfortable. "Figured the little ones would need a place to sleep." He moved toward the door. "I'll let you get settled. Supper's at 6 if you're feeling up to joining me. Otherwise, there's food in the pantry." After he left, Emma tugged at Tabitha's skirt. "I like him, Mama. He has kind eyes like Papa did." Tabitha's throat tightened. "Yes, he does seem kind." That night, after putting the twins to bed, Tabitha sat on the small porch of their new home, gazing at the stars. The main house was still lit, and she could see Owen's silhouette moving about. She wasn't sure what to make of him, a bachelor rancher with a successful operation who'd taken in a destitute widow and her children out of what seemed like simple kindness. "People aren't that good," she whispered to herself. Yet she couldn't deny the relief she felt having a roof over their heads and the promise of honest work. The next morning, Tabitha woke early and made breakfast for the twins before walking to the main house. She found Owen already outside, giving instructions to 2 ranch hands. "Good morning, Mrs. Ross," he called when he spotted her. "Sleep well, better than I have in months," she admitted. "I wanted to discuss my duties." Owen nodded and led her inside the house. It was larger than it appeared from outside, with a spacious kitchen, dining area, sitting room, and what she presumed were bedrooms down a hallway. "It's mostly keeping house," Owen explained. "Cooking, cleaning, mending. I've got hands for the ranch work, but they're not much for domestic matters." "And the children? They're welcome anywhere on the property, long as they're careful. Might be good for them to learn about ranch life." Tabitha couldn't help but notice the house, while clean, lacked the touches that made a house a home. No curtains on the windows, minimal decorations, and furniture arranged more for function than comfort. "Your sister, when did you say she was arriving?" "About 3 weeks from now. Clara's been teaching back east, but she's always loved the ranch, hoping she'll decide to stay on permanently." Tabitha nodded. The presence of another woman would certainly help quell any gossip about her position here. "I should warn you," Owen added, I've got neighbors who fancy themselves proper society. They might not take kindly to our arrangement at first. I'm accustomed to judgment, Mr. Parrish. Tabitha's voice held a hint of steel. It doesn't trouble me what others think so long as my children are safe and fed. Owen's expression softened. You remind me of my mother, same determination. The first week passed quickly, as Tabitha settled into a routine. She cooked meals for Owen and his 3 ranch hands, cleaned the main house, and began adding small touches to make it more comfortable: wildflowers in jars, rearranged furniture, and curtains she'd sewn from fabric Owen had purchased in town. The twins thrived in the open space of the ranch. Ethan followed Owen around whenever the rancher would allow it, asking endless questions about horses and cattle. Emma discovered a love for the small vegetable garden behind the main house, helping Tabitha tend the plants with surprising dedication for a 5-year-old. One evening, as Tabitha was serving supper, a wagon approached the ranch. Owen excused himself and went outside to greet the visitors. Through the window, Tabitha could see a well-dressed couple speaking with him, their expressions growing increasingly pinched. When Owen returned, his jaw was set in a hard line. "Everything all right?" she asked quietly. "The Whitmores," Owen said, sitting back down at the table. "Neighboring ranchers. They've heard about our arrangement and took it upon themselves to express concern about your reputation." Tabitha felt her cheeks burn. "I see. I told them my sister is coming to stay with us and that your position here is entirely respectable." Owen met her eyes. "But people will talk regardless." "It doesn't matter," Tabitha said firmly, though a part of her ached at being the subject of gossip yet again. In her former town, she'd been pitied as the poor widow. Now it seemed she'd be scorned as something worse. "It matters to me," Owen replied, surprising her. "You deserve better than their judgment. You're working hard to provide for your children. There's no shame in that." Later that night, as Tabitha was leaving the main house to return to the cabin, Owen stopped her at the door. "Mrs. Ross Tabitha," he said, using her given name for the first time. "I want you to know that you and the twins are welcome here for as long as you wish to stay. Don't let the Whitmores or anyone else make you feel otherwise." His kindness nearly undid her. "Thank you, Mr. Parrish." "Owen," he corrected gently. "If we're to be friends, you might as well use my name." Friends. The word warmed her more than it should have. The following Sunday, Tabitha dressed the twins in their best clothes, which weren't much, and prepared to take them to the church in Willow Creek. "You're welcome to ride with me," Owen offered, hitching his wagon. "I attend services most Sundays." Tabitha hesitated. "People will talk if we arrive together." Owen's expression was resolute. "Let them. I've nothing to hide, and neither do you." The church was full when they arrived, and heads turned as Owen helped Tabitha and the twins down from the wagon. He led them to a pew near the middle of the church, seemingly oblivious to the whispers that followed them. Throughout the service, Tabitha was acutely aware of the stares directed their way. Emma and Ethan, thankfully, were too busy trying to sit still to notice the atmosphere. Owen sat beside them, occasionally helping Ethan find the right page in the hymnal or smiling at Emma when she struggled to stay awake during the sermon. It was domestic in a way that made Tabitha's heart ache. James had been gone almost 7 months now, and while she still missed him, she'd been so consumed with survival that she'd had little time to dwell on the emptiness of life without a partner. After the service, several women approached Tabitha while Owen was speaking with some men outside. Mrs. Ross, a woman with a pinched face, said, "I'm Harriet Whitmore. We haven't been formally introduced, but I believe you're working at the Parrish Ranch." The way she said working made it clear what she thought of Tabitha's position. "Yes, I am," Tabitha replied evenly. "Mr. Parrish has been kind enough to provide my children and me with housing and employment." Another woman, younger and kinder looking, stepped forward. "I'm Sarah Miller, the school teacher. Your twins are adorable. Will they be joining us when school begins next month?" Before Tabitha could answer, Mrs. Whitmore interjected, "Surely they would be better served in a more conventional living situation." There are agencies back east that place orphan children with proper families. Tabitha felt as if she'd been slapped. My children are not orphans, Mrs. Whitmore. They have a mother who loves them very much. A mother who lives under the roof of an unmarried man, Mrs. Whitmore said with a sniff. Really, Mrs. Ross, you must consider what's best for them. What's best for them is having food in their bellies and a safe place to sleep, Tabitha shot back, her patience snapping. And I'll thank you to keep your opinions about my children to yourself. A strong hand settled on her shoulder, and Tabitha turned to find Owen standing beside her, his expression thunderous. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. I believe you owe Mrs. Ross an apology. The older woman paled slightly but held her ground. I'm merely concerned for the welfare of innocent children. Then perhaps you should focus your concern on the orphans at the mission in Fort Laramie rather than too well cared for children who have a loving mother. Owen's tone left no room for argument. Good day, ladies. He guided Tabitha and the twins away, his hand remaining protectively at the small of her back until they reached the wagon. I'm sorry about that, he said as he helped the twins up. Mrs. Whitmore has always considered herself the moral authority of Willow Creek. It's not your fault, Tabitha replied, though her hands were still shaking with anger and humiliation. I'm used to women like her. Owen's expression softened. You shouldn't have to be. On the ride home, Ethan and Emma chattered excitedly about the new friends they'd made, oblivious to the tension of the adult exchange. Tabitha was grateful for their resilience, their ability to find joy despite the uncertainty that had plagued their young lives. Miss Miller seemed nice, she remarked, thinking of the schoolteacher who had shown genuine warmth toward her children. Sarah's a good woman, Owen agreed. New to town, came out from Pennsylvania last year, she doesn't hold with the Whitmores' way of thinking. Tabitha nodded, wondering if she'd found a potential ally in the young teacher. She desperately needed female friendship, having left behind the few friends she'd had when they lost their homestead. As the weeks passed, Tabitha settled more deeply into life at the ranch. She found unexpected satisfaction in creating a comfortable home for Owen and, by extension, for her children. The main house gradually transformed under her care, becoming warmer and more inviting. Owen never commented directly on the changes, but she sometimes caught him looking around with a pleased expression that made her heart flutter in a way she tried to ignore. The twins flourished in the freedom of ranch life. Ethan was particularly taken with a gentle mare named Daisy, and Owen began teaching him to ride, leading the horse around the corral with patient instruction. Emma preferred helping with the chickens and gathering eggs, taking her responsibility seriously. One evening in late summer, Tabitha found Owen sitting on his porch, staring at a letter with a troubled expression. Bad news, she asked, setting down the mending she'd brought from the cabin. Owen sighed, folding the paper. It's from Clara. She's delayed her visit again. The school has asked her to stay through winter term. Tabitha sat beside him. You must miss her. I do, but more than that. He hesitated. Her presence would have silenced some of the talk in town, made things easier for you. I don't care about the gossips, Tabitha insisted, though they both knew it wasn't entirely true. The whispers followed her whenever she went to town, and several women had pulled their children away when Emma and Ethan tried to play with them. You should care, Owen said suddenly, his voice rough with emotion. You deserve respect, not condemnation for accepting help when you needed it. Tabitha was startled by his vehemence. Owen, truly, it's not, it is, he interrupted, and I've been thinking. He stood abruptly, pacing the porch. There might be a solution. Tabitha waited, suddenly nervous at his intensity. You could marry me, Owen said, the words rushing out before he seemed to think better of them. Tabitha gasped. What? Owen ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. That came out wrong. What I mean is, it would be a practical arrangement. You need security for yourself and the twins. I need someone to help run the household. We get along well enough. A marriage of convenience, Tabitha said flatly, feeling an unexpected pang of disappointment. At first, perhaps, Owen admitted. But we could build something real from it in time. I care for your children already, and He trailed off, looking away. I've come to care for you too. Tabitha stood, her mind whirling. This is too sudden, Owen. I can't possibly. You don't need to answer now, he said quickly. Just think about it, for the twins, if nothing else. I should go, Tabitha murmured, gathering her mending. The children will be waiting. She hurried back to the cabin, her cheeks burning and her thoughts in turmoil. Marriage to Owen would certainly solve many problems. The twins would have a secure home and she would be protected from the town's gossip. Owen was kind, hardworking, and good with her children. But marriage. She had loved James deeply, and while the sharpest edges of her grief had dulled, the thought of giving herself to another man seemed like a betrayal of his memory. Yet as she looked in on her sleeping children, their faces peaceful for the first time in months, she wondered if perhaps her responsibility to the living outweighed her loyalty to the dead. The next morning, Tabitha avoided the main house, sending Ethan with a message that she was feeling unwell and would prepare meals later. It wasn't entirely a lie her stomach was in knots over Owen's proposal. Around midday, there was a knock at the cabin door. Tabitha opened it to find Owen standing there, his hat in his hands. I've come to apologize, he said without preamble. I shouldn't have sprung that on you last night. It was thoughtless. Tabitha stepped aside to let him in, aware of Emma watching them curiously from where she was playing with her rag doll. Emma, sweetheart, why don't you go check on the chickens? Tabitha suggested. Remember to count them like Mr. Parrish showed you. Once Emma had scampered off, Tabitha turned to Owen. You don't need to apologize. Your offer was kind. It wasn't just kindness, Owen admitted, setting his hat on the table. I meant what I said about caring for you and the children. Tabitha studied him. At 32, Owen Parrish was an attractive man, tall and broad-shouldered from years of ranch work, with lines at the corners of his blue eyes that deepened when he smiled. He was respected in the community, successful in his business, and unfailingly gentle with her children. I was married for 6 years, she said quietly. James and I grew up together. We shared everything: dreams, hardships, joy, sorrow. When he died, I thought I would die too. Owen nodded, his expression solemn. I don't know if I can ever feel that way again, she continued. And I wouldn't want to enter a marriage offering less than my whole heart. I'm not asking for your heart right away, Owen said. Just a chance to earn it in time. He stepped closer. Tabitha, I know I'm not James. I wouldn't try to replace him. But I think we could build a good life together, you, me, and the twins. Tabitha felt tears threatening. The twins do adore you, and I them. Owen smiled. Ethan asked me yesterday if he could call me Pa. I told him that was up to you. The revelation startled her. He did. He misses his father, Owen said gently. Children need that security, that sense of belonging to someone who'll protect them no matter what. Tabitha knew he was right. Despite her efforts, she couldn't be both mother and father to her children. They needed a man in their lives, a good man like Owen. I need time, she finally said, to be sure this is right for all of us. Owen nodded, reaching out to squeeze her hand briefly. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. As September gave way to October, the ranch grew busier with preparations for winter. Hay needed to be stored, cattle moved to winter pastures, and the house made ready for the cold months ahead. Tabitha threw herself into the work, grateful for the distraction from Owen's proposal, which hung unresolved between them. Owen respected her request for time, never pressuring her for an answer. He remained as he had always been, kind to her children, respectful of her position, and increasingly important to their daily lives. One crisp afternoon, Tabitha was returning from hanging laundry when she heard Emma's scream. Dropping her basket, she ran toward the sound, her heart in her throat. She found Emma at the edge of the small pond behind the ranch, pointing frantically at the water. Ethan fell in, the little girl sobbed. He can't swim. Without hesitation, Tabitha waded into the cold water, searching desperately for her son. The pond wasn't deep, but deep enough to drown a small child. She called his name, panic rising as seconds ticked by with no response. Suddenly, there was a splash behind her, and Owen was there, diving deeper into the murky water. Moments later, he surfaced with Ethan in his arms, the boy pale and still. "He's not breathing," Owen gasped, carrying Ethan to shore. Tabitha fell to her knees beside them as Owen laid Ethan on the ground and began pressing on his chest. "Please, God, no," she prayed, clutching Emma, who was sobbing hysterically beside her. Long seconds passed as Owen worked frantically, pushing water from Ethan's lungs. Just when Tabitha thought all was lost, Ethan coughed violently, water spewing from his mouth as he gasped for air. "Mama." He croaked, his eyes fluttering open. Tabitha gathered him into her arms, tears of relief streaming down her face. "I'm here, my brave boy, you're safe now." Owen sat back, his clothes soaked and his face haggard with relief. "Thank God," he whispered. Later, after Ethan was tucked into bed with Emma keeping faithful watch beside him, Tabitha found Owen on his porch, staring into the gathering dusk. "How is he?" Owen asked immediately, sleeping. "The doctor says he'll be fine." Tabitha sat beside him, her body suddenly heavy with exhaustion. "Owen, I can never repay you for what you did today. You don't owe me anything," he said firmly. "Those children." He paused, emotion roughening his voice. "I love them as if they were my own. When I saw Ethan in that water, I felt like my own heart had stopped." Tabitha reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. "I've been thinking about your proposal." Owen tensed beside her, waiting. "When James died, I thought I would never love again," she continued. "I was so focused on survival that I didn't allow myself to consider the possibility. But today, when I saw you save my son," she took a deep breath, "I realized that my heart has already decided, even if my mind was too stubborn to acknowledge it." Owen turned to face her, hope dawning in his eyes. "Tabitha?" "Yes," she said simply, "I'll marry you, Owen Parrish. Not just for security or to silence the gossips, but because I believe we can build a good life together. A loving one." The smile that broke across Owen's face was like sunrise. Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, questioning at first, then deepening as Tabitha responded, her hand coming up to rest against his chest. When they parted, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I promise to be a good husband to you and a good father to the twins. I may not have all the right words, but I swear I'll show you every day how much you all mean to me." They were married 2 weeks later in the Willow Creek Church, with Emma as a flower girl and Ethan proudly carrying the rings. Sarah Miller helped Tabitha prepare, lending her a beautiful shawl for the ceremony and arranging wildflowers for her hair. "You look radiant," Sarah told her as they prepared in the small room at the back of the church. "And just so you know, most of the town is thrilled for you both. Don't let the Whitmores and their ilk make you think otherwise." True to Sarah's words, the church was full of well-wishers, ranch hands, shopkeepers, and families who'd gradually warmed to Tabitha as they saw her devotion to her children and Owen's obvious regard for her. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed her with such tenderness that tears sprang to her eyes. As they walked down the aisle together, Tabitha caught sight of Mrs. Whitmore, her mouth pinched in disapproval, but for once she didn't care. Her heart was too full of hope for the future to waste energy on those who couldn't share in her joy. That evening, after the small reception at the ranch, and after the twins had been tucked into bed in what was now their room in the main house, Owen led Tabitha to the master bedroom. "I've had something made for you," he said, reaching into a drawer. He pulled out a small wooden box and handed it to her. Inside, Tabitha found a locket on a delicate silver chain. When she opened it, she gasped. On one side was a tiny portrait of Emma and Ethan, and on the other, a lock of golden brown hair. "It's James's," Owen explained, seeing her confusion. "I found it among your things when we moved the cabin, I thought." I thought you should keep a part of him close to your heart. He'll always be their father and an important part of your life." Tears welled in Tabitha's eyes at his thoughtfulness. "Owen, I don't know what to say." He took the locket and fastened it around her neck. "You don't need to say anything. I know you loved him, and that doesn't threaten me. Love isn't diminished by being shared." Tabitha reached up to touch his face, marveling at this man who understood her heart so well. "I do love you, Owen Parrish." His eyes widened slightly. It was the first time she'd said the words. "And I love you, Tabitha Parrish, more than I thought possible." As winter settled over the Dakota Territory, the Parrish Ranch became truly a home. The main house, once just a functional dwelling for a bachelor rancher, was now filled with the sounds of children's laughter, the smells of home cooking, and the warmth of a family bound by love rather than just circumstance. Tabitha found unexpected joy in her new role as wife and partner. Owen consulted her on ranch decisions, valued her opinion, and shared the burden of raising the twins. In turn, she created the home he'd never had, filling it with comfort and affection. The twins thrived under their expanded family. Ethan followed Owen everywhere, learning the ways of ranching with eager determination. Emma blossomed under Tabitha's guidance and Owen's gentle encouragement, revealing a talent for drawing that Owen fostered by bringing her colored pencils from his trips to larger towns. When Clara finally arrived for a visit in early spring, she took one look at her brother's happiness and decided to stay. She took a position at the Willow Creek School alongside Sarah Miller, and the two young women became frequent visitors to the ranch, bringing books and new ideas from the East. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the twins play with the new puppy Owen had brought home, Tabitha leaned against her husband's shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. "Taking in a destitute widow and her children that day in town." Owen's arm tightened around her. "Regret the best decision I ever made, not for a single moment. Even with all the gossip at first, the Whitmores still barely speak to us," Owen chuckled. "The Whitmores are missing out on knowing an extraordinary family, their loss." Tabitha smiled, watching as Ethan showed Emma how to get the puppy to sit, his little face serious with concentration. "They are remarkable children, aren't they?" "They are," Owen's voice softened. "And they might have a new sibling to teach things to before too long." Tabitha turned to him, her eyes wide. "How did you know? I was going to tell you tonight." Owen's face split into a delighted grin. "Truly, you're certain?" The doctor confirmed it yesterday. "By Christmas, there will be another Parrish in this house." Owen pulled her into his arms, his kiss conveying all the joy words couldn't express. When they parted, he rested a hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Thank you," he whispered. "For the baby?" Tabitha asked, confused by his sudden emotion. "For everything. For trusting me with your children, with your heart, for making this house a home." He looked out at the twins, now rolling in the grass with the puppy. "When you arrived here, I thought I was offering you shelter, but the truth is, you gave me the home I never knew I needed." Tabitha rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. 2 years ago, she had been a desperate widow with no prospects, watching her children go hungry while door after door closed in her face. Now she was loved, secure, and expecting a child with a man who treasured her. "Owen," she said softly, "do you remember the day we met? You said sometimes a person just needs a chance." He nodded, running his hand gently over her hair. "You gave us that chance, but you gave us so much more too. You gave us all your home, but more importantly, you gave us your heart." As the sun set over the Dakota plains, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, the Parrish family gathered close on their porch, bound by love that had grown from the most unexpected beginnings: a desperate widow, 2 hungry children, and a cowboy with a heart big enough to make room for them all. 8 months later, as the first snow of winter dusted the prairie, Tabitha gave birth to a healthy baby boy they named James Owen Parrish, honoring both the father her twins had lost and the father who had chosen them with his whole heart. As Owen placed the infant in Emma and Ethan's eager arms, showing them how to support their baby brother's head, Tabitha watched with tears of joy, her heart full beyond measure. "Our family," Owen murmured, sitting beside her on the bed and pressing a kiss to her temple. "Complete." Tabitha smiled, watching her 7-year-old twins coo over their new brother. "For now," she teased. "The house has plenty of room to grow," Owen laughed, the sound warming her more than the fire crackling in the hearth. "However many children we have, Mrs. Parrish, this home will always have room for more love." As the snow fell softly outside and her family gathered close around her, Tabitha reflected on the journey that had brought her here from destitution and rejection to abundance and acceptance, from the depths of grief to the heights of joy. The path had been difficult, marked by loss and uncertainty, but it had led her to this moment, this home, this love. And in the years that followed, as the Parrish ranch prospered and their family grew, Tabitha often thought of that desperate day in Willow Creek when no one would hire the widow with twins, and one kind-hearted cowboy had given them all his home and with it, a future brighter than she could have ever imagined.